My son invited his fiancée to our family dinner to celebrate their engagement. Everyone was smiling, toasting champagne. Then during dessert, she quietly slipped a folded note to the man beside her and whispered something I wasn't supposed to hear. He has no clue what's coming. Before we continue, I'd appreciate if you could subscribe to Feathered Vengeance and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. The wine glass froze halfway to my lips. Victoria Sterling, my son David's fiancée, was sitting at my dining table in my modest Scottsdale ranch house, her perfectly manicured hand resting on the arm of a man she'd introduced as her business partner, Marcus Chen. She'd been talking about real estate markets and investment properties for the past 20 minutes, her voice smooth as expensive bourbon. "Mr. Wright," she said, turning those ice blue eyes on me. "David mentioned you worked for the Postal Service for 30 years. That pension must be nice. But have you considered what happens when inflation eats away at fixed income? I could help you invest wisely." My son David beamed at her like she'd just offered me the moon. He was 31, brilliant with code, naive about people. He'd met Victoria 3 months ago at some tech networking event in Tempe. She was 36, drove a white Mercedes, wore clothes that cost more than my monthly mortgage. "That's thoughtful," I said, keeping my voice mild. "But at my age, I prefer simple and safe." Victoria's laugh was practiced, musical. "Safe is how you stay poor, Mr. Wright. Marcus and I have clients who've doubled their retirement savings in 18 months. I watched Marcus nod enthusiastically. He was younger, maybe 30. Expensive watch, cheaper suit. The kind of accessories people buy when they're pretending to have money they don't actually possess yet. "Through dinner," I observed, the way Victoria's eyes catalogued my home. The brief pause when she noticed the framed photograph on the mantel, me shaking hands with a man in a NASA flight jacket. She'd started to ask about it, then stopped herself, dismissing it as unimportant. David, my beautiful, trusting son, couldn't see what I saw. The way Victoria's warmth only activated when he was looking at her. How her questions about my health, my living situation, my plans came just a bit too frequently. "Dad lives alone," David had said earlier, apologetic. "Since Mom passed 5 years ago. I worry about him sometimes." Victoria had touched his hand with practiced sympathy. "Of course you do. That's what makes you such a wonderful son." After dinner, while David was showing Marcus his new gaming setup in the spare room, Victoria helped me clear plates. We were alone in the kitchen when her phone buzzed. She glanced at it, typed a quick response, not noticing I could see the reflection in the window behind her. The text read, "Confirmed. Postal pension SS, maybe 200K in savings tops. Easy mark." I rinsed a plate, my hands steady despite the cold fury spreading through my chest. 40 years of working in aerospace engineering, consulting for companies that built aircraft and satellites, and this woman thought I was a vulnerable retiree with pocket change. That night, after they'd left, David called me. "Dad, isn't Victoria amazing? She's so smart about money. She thinks we should help you get your finances optimized before the wedding." "Before the wedding?" I kept my voice neutral. "Well, yeah, we're thinking June. Dad, I know it's fast, but when you know, you know. And Victoria's been so helpful. She even suggested we could get you set up in a nice senior living community nearby. You wouldn't have to worry about maintaining the house, and we could visit all the time." I closed my eyes. There it was. The play. Get the old man into managed care, take control of his assets through concerned family, drain everything. "Son, I'm only 63. I'm not quite ready for a retirement home." I know. Victoria just thinks it's good to plan ahead. She's really thoughtful like that." After I hung up, I sat in my study and pulled out my phone. The contact list contained numbers most people would be surprised a retired postal worker possessed. I scrolled to Robert Chen, attorney, old friend from my aerospace days when I was consulting for Raytheon and Northrop Grumman. "Thomas," Robert answered on the first ring. "It's been 6 months. What's wrong?" "I need you to run a background check." Quietly, I heard papers rustling. "Name? Victoria Sterling. Claims to be a luxury real estate agent in Scottsdale. Partner named Marcus Chen. No relation to you, I assume. I'll have something by tomorrow morning. Thomas, should I be worried? I looked around my study. The walls held framed photographs I'd never explained to David. Me with aerospace executives. Me at a satellite launch. Me receiving an Industry Achievement Award. The bookshelf held technical manuals on avionics and navigation systems that Victoria had walked right past. Someone's trying to run a con on my son, I said quietly. They think I'm an easy target. Robert's voice went hard. They thought wrong. I'll call you tomorrow. I hung up and opened my laptop. The password unlocked access to accounts I rarely checked anymore. Investment portfolios managed by a firm in Manhattan. Commercial real estate holdings in 3 states. The consulting royalties that still came in from patents I'd helped develop. Total net worth, $35 million, give or take. I'd lived modestly after Sarah died. Partly from grief, partly because David was happy believing his dad was just a regular guy who'd worked hard and retired comfortably. I'd never wanted money to change how he saw me or how people saw him. But Victoria Sterling had made a critical miscalculation. She'd looked at my modest house, my casual clothes, my age, and seen weakness. I pulled up her real estate license on the Arizona Department of Real Estate website. Active license. But her sales history showed only 3 transactions in 2 years, all of them properties under $300,000. Not exactly the luxury market she claimed to dominate. My phone buzzed. David, texting a photo. Victoria and him at some expensive restaurant, her ring finger now sporting a diamond that looked impressive from the photo. Too impressive for a struggling real estate agent. She said, "Yes. Dad, I'm engaged." I stared at the photo. My son's face, radiant with joy. Victoria's smile, perfect and empty. I typed back, "Congratulations, son. When can we celebrate properly?" "Engagement party next month. Victoria's planning everything. Says she wants you to be part of it all." I bet she did. Robert called at 7 the next morning. "Thomas, sit down." I was already sitting. "Tell me." Victoria Sterling, age 36. Real estate license, barely active. But here's what's interesting. In the past 5 years, she's been engaged 4 times. 4 different men. Ages ranging from 28 to 42. All of them had widowed or single fathers. All 4 engagements ended suddenly, and in 3 cases, the fathers filed police reports for attempted financial fraud. My grip tightened on the phone. And Marcus Chen is her cousin. He plays various roles, sometimes business partner, sometimes financial advisor. They work as a team. The pattern is consistent. Victoria romances the son. Marcus provides legitimacy as a professional contact. They isolate the father, convince the son that dad needs help managing money. Then they drain accounts and disappear before anyone realizes what happened. Why isn't she in prison? The victims were embarrassed. Most of them settled privately just to get rid of her. Only 1 case went to court, and it got dismissed on a technicality. She's smart, Thomas. She knows how to stay just on the edge of legal. I thought about David's face in that photo. Robert, I need you to document everything. Every past victim, every pattern, every piece of evidence. And I need contact information for those fathers she targeted. What are you planning? I'm going to let her think she's winning. Then I'm going to make sure she never does this to anyone else's family. Over the next 2 weeks, I played the part of the confused elderly man perfectly. When Victoria called to discuss financial planning, I agreed to meet her and Marcus at a coffee shop. I brought a manila folder with copies of my bank statements, the ones showing my modest checking account and pension deposits. Victoria's eyes lit up when I spread them on the table. "Mr. Wright, you're being very wise to consider your options. Marcus has some excellent investment opportunities." Marcus leaned forward, his voice confidential. "Mr. Wright, with your permission, I could move these funds into a managed portfolio. Much better returns than letting it sit in a basic savings account." "I don't know," I said, letting uncertainty color my voice. "It's all I have." "That's exactly why you need to be smart about it," Victoria said, her hand covering mine with false warmth. "David would want you taken care of." "Actually, Mr. Wright, have you considered what would happen if something happened to you? Does David have power of attorney?" There it was. The hook. Power of attorney? I let confusion show on my face. I'm not sure I understand. Victoria exchanged a glance with Marcus. It's just a legal document that would allow David to help manage things if you became unable to. Very standard for someone your age. I actually know a wonderful attorney who specializes in elder law. I pretended to consider this. I suppose that makes sense. David is my only family. Exactly. Victoria smiled. And once you're married to David, I'll be family too. We'll all take care of you together. I left that meeting and immediately called Robert. They're moving faster than I thought. They want power of attorney through David. That's their endgame. Once they have that, they convince David you're incompetent, move you to managed care, and drain everything. Thomas, we need to move now. Not yet. Let them commit fully. I want evidence that will stick. Robert was quiet. You're setting a trap. I'm protecting my son. There's a difference. The engagement party was scheduled for a Saturday evening at a rented event space in Paradise Valley. Victoria had insisted on planning everything, and David had happily agreed, thrilled that his fiancée and father were getting along so well. I'd spent the previous 3 weeks doing my own investigation. I'd flown to Denver to meet Martin Harrison, a retired accountant whose son Victoria had targeted 2 years ago. Martin sat in his modest condo and told me the same story with different details. She was perfect, he said, his voice still bitter. My son thought he'd won the lottery. She convinced him I was getting forgetful, that I needed help. Before I knew it, she had access to my accounts through my son's power of attorney. $70,000 gone in 6 weeks. Why didn't you prosecute? Pride. Shame. My son was devastated when he realized what she'd done. We just wanted it over. Martin looked at me with haunted eyes. Stop her, Mr. Wright. Don't let her do to your son what she did to mine. I visited 3 more victims. Same story, different cities. Victoria and Marcus had refined their operation over years. They knew exactly how to exploit love, trust, and family bonds. On the morning of the engagement party, Robert arrived at my house with a briefcase full of documents. We sat in my study while he laid out everything. Sworn statements from 4 previous victims. Bank records showing Victoria's pattern of sudden deposits after each engagement. Marcus Chen's criminal record. Minor fraud charges from 10 years ago. And this? He handed me a recording device. Arizona is a one-party consent state. Whatever she says to you tonight, if you're part of the conversation, it's admissible. I picked up the small device. This feels like something from a movie. This is real life, Thomas. And you're about to ruin her real good. The party was elegant. Victoria had spared no expense, which should have been David's first clue. White roses, champagne fountain, catered food from an expensive Scottsdale restaurant. Probably $50,000 minimum. I arrived in my best suit, the one I hadn't worn since Sarah's funeral. David greeted me at the door, glowing. Dad, can you believe all this? Victoria planned everything. I hugged my son, feeling the weight of what was coming. It's beautiful, son. You deserve happiness. Victoria swept over in a designer dress, her smile dazzling. Mr. Wright, I'm so glad you're here. David's been telling me how excited you are about our engagement. Of course, I said. My son's happiness is everything to me. That's exactly the kind of love that makes family special. She linked her arm through mine. Actually, Mr. Wright, could I speak with you privately for a moment? There's something I'd like to discuss. David waved us off, already distracted by friends arriving. Victoria led me to a quiet corner near the coat check. The recording device in my jacket pocket was active. My heart was steady. Years of high-stakes aerospace negotiations had taught me calm under pressure. Mr. Wright, Victoria's voice dropped to intimate confidentiality. I wanted to talk to you about David's future. Our future together. I'm listening. You know I love your son very much, and part of loving him means wanting to make sure you're taken care of. I've been researching some really wonderful senior living communities, places where you'd have full-time care, activities, medical support right there. Victoria, I appreciate the thought, but I'm healthy. I'm not ready for that. Her hand touched my arm, gentle but firm. I understand. But Mr. Wright, David worries about you living alone in that big house. What if something happened? What if you fell? He'd never forgive himself. Has David said he's worried? He has. He's just too sweet to tell you directly. That's why I'm talking to you now, father to future daughter-in-law. We could handle everything. The house sale, moving your assets into proper management, finding you the perfect community. David wouldn't have to stress about it at all. Moving my assets? Well, yes, that's part of the process. We'd consolidate everything into a trust that David and I would manage for you. Marcus is excellent with these arrangements. You'd never have to worry about finances again. The recording device captured every word. I looked into Victoria's eyes and saw nothing but calculation. That's quite a generous offer, I said slowly. It's what family does, Mr. Wright. And after the wedding, we'll all be family. I was thinking we could meet with Marcus next week and start the paperwork. The sooner we get you settled, the sooner David can stop worrying. You've thought of everything. I try to. Her smile was triumphant. She thought she'd won. I excused myself, walked to the bar, ordered a scotch I didn't plan to drink. Robert was there, dressed in a suit, looking like just another guest. He raised his glass slightly. The signal, everything was in place. Victoria took the microphone for a toast. She thanked everyone for coming, talked about love and family and future. David stood beside her, his arm around her waist, looking at her like she was the answer to every prayer. Then she said, "And I want to especially thank David's father, Mr. Wright, for welcoming me into the family so warmly. I promise to take care of his son, and I hope he'll let us take care of him too." Applause rippled through the room. I set down my untouched scotch and walked to where Robert stood. "It's time," I said quietly. Robert nodded and made a phone call. 2 minutes later, the event space doors opened, and Detective Sarah Morrison walked in, accompanied by another plainclothes officer. Victoria saw them immediately. Her face went sheet white. I walked to the microphone. The room went quiet. "Thank you all for coming tonight," I said, my voice carrying across the suddenly silent space. "Before we continue this celebration, there's something everyone needs to know about Victoria Sterling." David's face creased with confusion. "Dad, what are you doing?" "Protecting you, son." I looked at Victoria. She was frozen, Marcus Chen beside her looking for an exit. "Victoria, you made a critical error in judgment. You looked at me and saw an easy target, a vulnerable old man with a postal pension and some savings. Mr. Wright, I don't know what you think. Let me finish." My voice went cold. "You didn't know that I spent 40 years as an aerospace engineering consultant. I worked with NASA, Boeing, Raytheon, Lockheed Martin. I hold patents on navigation systems currently in use on commercial aircraft. My consulting firm was acquired for $22 million in 2018. The room was utterly silent. My current net worth is approximately $35 million. I own commercial properties in 3 states. I have investment portfolios managed by firms in New York and Chicago. The house you thought was everything I had? I bought it outright in 1992. It's where I raised my son. I kept it because I loved it, not because I couldn't afford better." Victoria's face had gone from white to red. Marcus was edging toward the door. "But you didn't research me, did you? You saw my age, my modest lifestyle, and you thought you'd found another easy mark. Just like Martin Harrison in Denver. Just like Robert Paulson in Tucson. Just like Chen Wei in Albuquerque. Just like David Mitchell in Las Vegas." I pulled out a folder, held it up. "I have sworn statements from 4 men whose sons you targeted, 4 families you tried to destroy. The pattern is identical every time. Romance the son, befriend the father, convince everyone the elderly parent needs care, get power of attorney, drain the accounts, disappear." David was staring at Victoria, horror dawning on his face. "Tell me he's wrong. Victoria, tell me this isn't true." She opened her mouth. No words came out. Detective Morrison stepped forward. "Victoria Sterling, Marcus Chen, I need you both to come with me. We have some questions about attempted financial fraud and elder abuse." The room erupted. Guests pulling out phones, people talking over each other. Marcus bolted for the door and ran straight into 2 uniformed officers who'd been waiting outside. Victoria looked at me with pure hatred. "You set me up. You knew the whole time." I suspected from the first dinner. The background check confirmed it. The recording I made earlier tonight of you explaining your plan to institutionalize me and take my assets? That's just evidence for the prosecution. David was crying, his world shattered. I walked to my son, put my arms around him, while the police led Victoria and Marcus away. I'm sorry, I whispered. I'm so sorry you had to see this. You knew. All this time, you knew. I had to be sure. I had to get enough evidence to make sure she couldn't do this to anyone else. If I'd told you my suspicions without proof, would you have believed me? David pulled back, wiped his eyes. No. I loved her. God, Dad, I was ready to marry her. I know. That's why I had to do it this way. The party dissolved. Guests left in shocked clusters, already texting the story. Robert helped me gather the evidence folders. Detective Morrison took my formal statement and the recording. David sat on a chair, head in his hands. I sat beside him. I have $35 million, I said quietly. You didn't know because I never wanted money to change how you saw me or how you lived your life. Your mother and I decided that when you were born, we wanted you to grow up normal, to earn your own success, to value people for who they are, not what they have. 35 million, David repeated numbly, and I had no idea. That was intentional. But son, she had no idea either, and that was her fatal mistake. She thought age and appearance meant vulnerability. She forgot that wisdom beats youth and patience beats greed. Over the next 3 months, I watched Victoria Sterling's operation collapse. The district attorney prosecuted aggressively. My testimony, combined with statements from her previous victims, buried her. Marcus took a plea deal and testified against his cousin. Victoria got 4 years in federal prison for elder financial fraud, conspiracy, and wire fraud. Robert helped me establish a foundation, Arizona Elder Protection Alliance. I funded it with $2 million. We helped train law enforcement to recognize these scams, educated families about financial predators, and provided legal assistance to victims. David took it hard. He threw himself into therapy, working through the betrayal and the shock of learning his father wasn't who he'd thought. We had long talks in my study, where I finally explained my career, my wealth, my choices. I lived modestly because I wanted to, I told him one evening, not because I had to. Your mother and I were happy in that house. We didn't need a mansion to know we were blessed. And I didn't want you growing up as the rich kid. I wanted you to be David Wright, good person, hard worker, kind soul. And that's exactly who you became. But you could have told me. After Mom died, you could have said something. Maybe. But would it have changed anything except make you feel different about yourself? You built a successful career on your own merit. You earned respect through your work. That's worth more than any inheritance I could give you. 6 months after the engagement party disaster, David met someone new. Emma Chen, no relation to Marcus, was a pediatric nurse. She drove a practical Honda, lived in a modest apartment, and on their third date, she asked David about his mother, not his bank account. I met her at a quiet dinner at my house. She admired the photos on the mantel, asked about my aerospace career with genuine interest, and when I mentioned I'd worked on navigation systems, she lit up. My dad was a pilot, she said. He always talked about how amazing the technology was. He would have loved to meet you. David watched her, with careful hope, learning to trust again. I watched them together and felt something I hadn't felt in months. Peace. One evening, a letter arrived from the women's correctional facility, where Victoria was serving her sentence. David brought it to me, unopened. Do you want to read it? He asked. I held the envelope, considering. Then I opened it. Mr. Wright, she'd written in neat handwriting. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I need you to know that what I did was calculated cruelty, and you had every right to stop me. I spent my whole adult life looking at people and seeing only what I could take. You taught me there are people in this world you can't con because they're smarter, more patient, and more strategic than you'll ever be. I have 4 years to think about that. I hope David finds someone worthy of him. It was never me. David read it over my shoulder. What are you going to do? I thought about Martin Harrison, still scarred by what Victoria had done. about the other families she'd destroyed, about my son learning to trust again with careful, wounded hope. Nothing, I said. She has her consequences. What she does with them is her choice. I filed the letter away and turned to David. Emma's coming for dinner this weekend, right? His face softened. Yeah. She wants to bring her famous pasta. Good. I'll make my garlic bread. The real stuff, not from the store. Dad. David hesitated. Thank you. For protecting me. For being smarter than I was. For being your father. That's what fathers do. That Saturday, Emma arrived with homemade pasta and a bright smile. We ate dinner in my modest kitchen, laughing about pilot stories and medical disasters and David's terrible cooking attempts. She never once asked about money or assets or what I was worth. Later, washing dishes, she said to me quietly, Mr. Wright, David told me what happened with his ex-fiancée. I just want you to know I'm not her. I don't want anything except to make your son happy. I dried a plate, studied her earnest face. I know. David knows too. That's why he's falling in love with you. She blushed. Is it that obvious? To a father? Always. After they left, I sat in my study with a cup of coffee and looked at the photographs on my wall. Me with aerospace executives and NASA scientists. Me receiving awards for innovations that helped aircraft navigate safely. Me with Sarah on our wedding day, both of us young and hopeful. I'd spent 40 years building a career most people never knew about. I'd lived modestly by choice, not necessity. I'd raised a good son who was learning that betrayal didn't mean everyone would betray him. Victoria Sterling was in prison. Marcus Chen was on probation. The foundation was helping other families avoid what we'd barely escaped. And I was still here, in my modest house in Scottsdale, with my hidden wealth and my quiet life, and my son who finally understood that love and money were two entirely different things. The phone rang. Robert, checking in. How's David? He asked. Better. Getting there. Met a good woman. And you? I looked around my study, at the life I'd built, the secrets I'd kept, the battle I'd won. I'm good, old friend. Justice was served. My son is safe. That's all I needed. Thomas Wright, Master of Aerospace Navigation and Family Protection. I laughed. Something like that. After we hung up, I opened my laptop and checked the Foundation's latest report. We'd helped 12 families in the past quarter, prevented 8 potential scams, recovered $400,000 in stolen assets. Victoria had tried to prey on what she thought was weakness. She'd forgotten that sometimes the quietest people are the most dangerous, and the most modest lives hide the sharpest minds. I'd lived through aerospace industry negotiations, satellite launches, technical battles that most people couldn't imagine. Outsmarting a con artist was simple in comparison. The real victory wasn't in her arrest or Marcus's plea deal. It was in watching David laugh with Emma over dinner. It was in knowing he'd learned to look deeper than surface appearances, to value character over charm, to trust his instincts even when his heart wanted to believe. That's what fathers do. We protect. We teach. And when necessary, we remind the world that wisdom doesn't retire just because you hit 60. I turned off my study light and walked toward the sound of my life continuing. The modest house held more than Victoria Sterling ever could have imagined. Not in assets or accounts, but in lessons learned and love preserved. That's the wealth that matters. That's the inheritance I'll leave my son. And that's the story of how a retired aerospace consultant taught a con artist that underestimating people based on age is always a costly mistake. If you enjoyed this story, please like this video, subscribe to Feathered Vengeance, and share your thoughts in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the video on your screen. Thank you for watching.